You've probably heard the phrase, life imitates art. Well, death does too. Throughout history, some of the most powerful, fearless, and brilliant people met their end in ways so absurd they sound like comedy sketches. Kings who ruled empires, warriors who survived countless battles, and inventors who changed the world yet. All of them were defeated by accidents so ridiculous that even a cartoon would hesitate to use them. Today, we're diving into the most ridiculous deaths in history. Let's begin with the Viking who was killed by his enemy's teeth. Sigurd the Mighty, a Viking earl of the 9th century, defeated a rival in battle and decided to take a trophy home. Instead of gold or jewels, he tied the severed head of his enemy to his horse's saddle. Bad idea. As he rode away in victory, the dead man's teeth rubbed against Sigurd's leg, cutting it open. That tiny wound became infected, and not long after, the Viking who had conquered lands and crushed armies was dead. Sigurd had survived blades, arrows, and axes, but he couldn't survive a bite from a corpse. Next, the king who literally laughed himself to death. Martin of Aragon, a Spanish king in the 5th-10th century, attended a lavish banquet. After overeating to the point of exhaustion, he asked his court jester for a joke. The fool told him a silly story about a deer falling out of a tree. For some reason, Martin found it so funny that he burst into uncontrollable laughter, fell off his chair, and died on the spot. Imagine living your life as a king and then becoming remembered not for your crown or your wars, but because you couldn't stop laughing at a bad joke. Now, let's talk about the inventor who was undone by his own machine. William Bullock, an American engineer in the 1800s, revolutionized printing with the rotary press. His invention allowed newspapers to be printed faster and cheaper than ever before. But a few years later, while trying to fix one of his presses, his foot got caught in the machine. The wound became infected, and despite attempts at surgery, he didn't survive. The man who gave the world the modern press ended up being crushed by the very thing that made him famous. It's as if Thomas Edison had electrocuted himself with a light bulb on the royal stage again. There's Frederick III of Germany, remembered as the 99-day emperor. In 1888, Frederick ascended the throne, already suffering from throat cancer. His doctors could not agree on what to do. Some wanted radical surgery. Others insisted on experimental treatments. Instead of saving him, the endless arguments and questionable cures only made his condition worse. He died after just 99 days as emperor. His reign is remembered less for political achievements and more for the medical chaos that surrounded him. A tragic reminder that sometimes too many doctors really can spoil the patient. Then we have the daredevil who survived Niagara Falls, only to lose to an orange peel. Bobby Leach was a British stuntman who craved danger. In 1911, he went over Niagara Falls in a steel barrel and lived to tell the tale. Broken bones! Yes, but alive! He became a minor celebrity for his stunt. Yet, years later, while walking on a quiet street in New Zealand, he slipped on an orange peel, broke his leg, and developed gangrene. After an amputation, he didn't survive. A man who had cheated death in the most extreme way imaginable was finally defeated by a piece of fruit. Next is Franz Reichelt, the tailor who thought he could fly. Known as the Flying Tailor, Reichelt was obsessed with creating a wearable parachute suit. He tested prototypes by tossing dummies off buildings, but when they failed, he decided the problem wasn't the design, it was the height. In 1912, he convinced the authorities to let him test from the Eiffel Tower, telling them he would use a dummy. Instead, he strapped the parachute suit to himself, stood on the ledge, and jumped. Reporters and photographers were there to watch. His parachute didn't open, and he plummeted to his death. He became both the inventor and the victim of his own invention. To this day, his fall remains one of the most infamous recorded stunts in history. And finally, the playwright who was killed by a turtle. The Greek tragedian Aeschylus was told by an oracle that he would die by something falling from the sky. To protect himself, He avoided buildings, trees, and anything that could possibly fall. But fate has a sense of humor. One day, an eagle flying overhead spotted his bald head, mistook it for a rock, and dropped a turtle on it in an attempt to crack the shell. The great writer of tragedies died in a way so absurd it could have been a comedy. A man whose life was dedicated to the theater was brought down by a turtle delivery from above. These stories prove that in the end, no one is safe from the ridiculous. You can be a king, a warrior, an inventor, or a poet, but sometimes the smallest and silliest things decide your fate. A joke, a piece of fruit, a bad invention, or even a turtle. History is full of people who shaped the world only to exit it in ways that still make us laugh centuries later. So, which of these deaths do you think was the most absurd? Was it the Viking killed by a tooth, the king who laughed himself to death, the daredevil defeated by fruit, or the playwright brought down by a turtle? Let me know your thoughts in the comments. And if you enjoyed this dive into the strangest corners of history, don't forget to hit the like button. Share this video with your friends. And most importantly, subscribe to **** past history ****, so you don't miss the next story where tragedy and comedy collide.